Hello, movie fans. Demetri Panos here on the Popcorn Talk Network's Anatomy of a Movie, where today we discuss Robert Zemeckis' 18th movie, Allied. See you soon.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
Well, hello, movie fans. Again, this is Demetri Panos from the Popcorn Talk Network, Anatomy of a Movie. And I'm joined with the person who we started it all, Marisa Serafini. Hey,
Hello,
Marisa.
Demetri. Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm Marisa Serafini. You can follow me on Twitter at SeraphiniTV.
And you can support me if you choose on Twitter at DMovies1701. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, we are today talking about Robert Zemeckis, great director Robert Zemeckis, his 18th movie. Wow.
He's had quite the career.
Amazing career. I mean, he could have stopped at 3 movies.
Right.
But
those 3 movies.
Thank God he continued on. And this movie is a throwback World War II romantic spy thriller called Allied, starring Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard.
Try to do it with a French accent.
I can't do it. Just like Brad Pitt's French accent was off. There's no way.
What?
In any case, as we always start the show off, we talk about what we thought about it. So, Marisa, please.
You know what? There were some things about this movie that I really enjoyed, and some things that I not so much. For Robert Zemeckis, I was really looking forward to this one, and it looked great despite all the scandal that's going on behind the scenes with this film. You know, I thought the concept was great. Always the spy thriller kind of who do we trust in your relationship. I thought that was a great concept to go about. And I mean, Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard, they are both so well renowned as actors themselves individually. Put them together, and it's going to be amazing. And I love any World War II story. You know me. We covered a lot of World War II movies here. So anything World War II time era fascinates me no matter what it is. And so I thought they got the period down beautifully. It looked great. I think the storyline is where it kind of fell a little flat for me. More so, I mean, we had the story of, you know, hey, she's a spy. The wife is a spy. But, other than that, what else happens?
Yeah.
I don't think it was too simple of a storyline for me to constantly keep engaged for this movie for 2 hours.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, for me, and I'm going to put my geeking hat on for a second. So it's definitely a throwback World War II spy thriller. And it has its nods to films of a different era. Things like, you know, Saboteur, Under Suspicion, Eye of the Needle, and of course Casablanca.
Oh, I love Casablanca.
And of course Casablanca. And there was even a little bit of Lawrence of Arabia to be found in Allied. All great. Don't overpower the movie. They don't take over the movie. They're just nice, subtle nods to previous films of a different era, and this movie was really made, you know, cut from the cloth of those various other movies. You know, yet for me, even though it was beautifully shot, handily directed by Robert Zemeckis, and he worked very hard to try and build suspense. But personally, I thought it was script coupled with some performance that they give away the spy. Like there are some great plot points, but there weren't enough. If you're gonna have a spy thriller, there weren't enough MacGuffins or misdirections to get off the point. And here, spoiler, we are a very spoiler-rich movie. That pointed direction away from Marion Cotillard's character as being the spy. Like, I sort of kind of knew from listening to her dialogue and such that, and knowing what the story was about, that she was the spy. And that sort of kind of took away some of the suspense of the movie for me. But yet I thought that, as you were saying, that in their own right, they're really solid actors. putting them together, I think it was a really good pairing. And I found that there was definitely kindling for that fire, but it didn't blossom for me. Like, I didn't mind them together, but I also didn't think that there was the heavy passion chemistry either. And I think it might have been the choice, like maybe the way Brad Pitt seemed a little bit subtle, almost too subtle. And Marion, her character, Marion's, she was a little bit cold, and everything seemed to be almost calculated. And we'll get to certain plot points, like when she was having the baby, which beautiful, amazing scene, right?
Yeah.
Totally original.
Gorgeous.
I've never seen it. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. And, you know, one thing that you mentioned, too, is how beautifully this movie looked. I have to shout out, because this woman, if you watch this show, this woman is very near and dear to my heart, because I worked as part of her team my first job when I moved to LA, and that's costume designer, Academy Award nominee costume designer Joanna Johnston. And I have to give her a shout out, because her costumes capture the period and showcase that even in wartime, people looked vogue. Like, they looked stunning in what they wore. And it wasn't flashy stunning, it was that period, which I love the style of that period. So the movie looked good, even from a costume standpoint. So which we'll talk about the detailing of that later on.
I think visually and like all the technical aspects of this film, I think were like really up to par. I think the story was like probably the part where I had the most, I don't want to say issues, but like where I found lacking a little bit.
Whereabouts?
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
Well, just the storyline. I mean, we get these two paired together on a assignment.
Right.
And that takes up the first probably good solid 45 minutes of the movie. And it was kind of like a big climactic scene once they take out the German ambassador.
Right.
And then afterwards, you're like, okay, what else happens? Like, they work together, and then thanks to the trailer, and anyone who's going into this movie who knows what it's about, we know that they get married, your wife is a spy. And then the rest of the movie is like, okay, we know she's a spy. Now let's get to it.
Yeah.
I think it was just too slow of a burn to watch Max Vatan find out all these things about his wife just to confirm that she's a spy.
Yeah, I mean, his hunt for this is, trying to figure that out. I thought that was perhaps one of the more interesting parts. I want to go back to the set piece that you mentioned at the beginning of the, in the first half of the movie. I want to ask you, and I'm going to leave this out to the audience as well to comment on. Did you find that it was all too easy? Like, they seem to just like...
What was all too easy?
Their
assignment?
Well, not the assignment. The assignment sounds very hard. Mm-hmm. The way they carried it off and then got away, it seemed a little bit easy. Like, they shot him, and then they're out the door in a car and they're out, and nobody chased them. I couldn't help but think of the scene that took place in Inglourious Bastards when they were in the theater, also starring Brad Pitt, and killing Hitler. Those guys had a hell of a harder time trying to get out of that theater. Yeah. And again, I know he was just a Nazi ambassador, which we learn later on he was not a Hitler sympathizer. He was a Hitler dissident. So maybe that was why it was so easy for them to get out. But the first thing I thought of was there was no car chase. There was they just walked out.
They literally walked out at a brisk pace, but they walked.
They literally walked out, got into the car, drove away. He proposed. I was like, okay.
Like, I'm in love with you. We just did some action climactic scene. Let's get married.
Yeah, and again, beautifully rendered and shot.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I thought it was too easy as well. I think the cool thing that actually got me engaged in the film is that, okay, they're both on this assignment. They're meeting each other for the first time. They have to go through all these obstacles just to get to the party that had the person that they were assigned to kill out. It's like, I thought that was cool, how they had to work together for the first time and kind of build their relationship between those two. But then after that, I'm like, what else can happen? What else can be as climactic as this right now? And that was in the first 45 minutes.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And also, I'm going to throw in there, too, their first meeting when he walked in and they were at the nightclub and he sees her for the first time. That, to me, is the scene where, for me, they at least had the most spark. Like, she turns around and has this smile, and they did sell it that they were a couple that had been together for some time. And to me, like, later on down the movie, it never seemed to reach that pitch for me.
Well, it's like the stakes weren't as high to make it believable.
Yeah. And for me, it was like a little bit story-wise. Well, you said it was like a little bit too simple. Like, the department that Brad Pitt works for is a very thorough, researched department. So when they brought Brad Pitt in to break the news, it's a very interesting scene. But that's where they mention, oh, and by the way, is that Nazi ambassador that you killed? Well, he was not a Hitler sympathizer. He was a dissident, and that's why he was killed. And I was like going, how did you, A, miss that minor detail?
Right.
And B, now you're bringing it up? Like, because in a sense, then that mission was sort of a failure from the Allies' point of view.
Yeah, from
they
like
just
the
lost
people he just worked with.
Yeah. Like, how did you miss that detail?
See, I think that was also my issue. I think that it's good that you bring that up too, because it seems that there were so many discrepancies and inconsistent with the people he was working for.
Yeah.
I'm like, how trustworthy are they if they keep missing all these big points in their life? Like, they even said in the movie that's like went through a very thorough vetting system, and they went to look over Marianne Beauséjour's background just to get approved to go to a new country.
Yeah.
And so, like, we get the idea that they did a background check on her, she approved, but, like, how thorough was that background check if they made a mistake about her, and then they also made a mistake about the mission
ambassador
that they were on?
Yeah, who ends up being an ally.
Yeah.
You
killed our, like, that was actually a friendly fire.
Yeah.
Instead of an enemy fire.
There's nothing friendly about that fire. I mean, that was a great scene. But, so that was like that was a scene that I was like, well, how did they not know? And my other thing about Marianne's character, too, is she was a very thorough character herself. Mm-hmm. And that she was even coaching, Brad Pitt's character, right? She was coaching Max. That's how thorough she was. But she didn't learn how to play piano?
I know.
Again, I was like, it was a really swell plot point when we find out, that looks exactly like her, and she does wonderful paintings. What kind of paintings? Watercolors. Paint. What kind of... And you're like, oh, okay. She goes, and she plays the piano beautifully, and you're...
Right,
wait, what?
She forgot something. Also because that shows, like, she knew certain aspects of the previous Marianne Beauséjour's life, but she didn't learn it all. Or maybe she just, like, refused to learn the piano after all these years. You think she'd be in front of a piano and someone might ask her. But also that goes to show with Max Vatan's character, where once they're trying to get the invitation to the party, and the guy's like, write down the chemical the chemical
great
for
point
phosphate.
For phosphate.
Like, he was researched. He knew what he was doing. Like, he knew this type of person would need to know this type of information. Yeah. And the fact that she didn't learn piano kind of bothers me.
Yeah. And you bring up that was a great scene.
That was great.
By the way,
the whole cutting of the deck was
the whole cutting of the deck.
But, like, it also shows, like, his character was well researched, really took the time to learn exactly what he needed to play the part.
Yeah, like a good spy. Yeah. And she did up to this one minor detail. That ended up being well, that's true. It ended up being the detail that pulled the thread on her on everything.
Back.
Yeah, and so those were certain details that I sort of kind of found like just interesting, because again, if I know she's a spy and through her dialogue at the very beginning, he was like, wow, it really looks like you love these people. When they're in the car, she goes, well, I play to their feelings. I have to make it real. And, and then she said, I actually do like them, but that's how I get my job done. I have to play to their feelings. So automatically I'm on edge when I hear that dialogue, because I'm like going, okay, she going to play to his feelings, and how is this going to wrap out? And then she said, during the scene, the birth scene, which we'll talk about, we might as well do it now. She says, this is the person who I am. And I'm thinking, you're a person who's in constant unnerving pain.
You're in labor right now.
This is the truth. This is what you're seeing. What you're seeing is like real. And I'm like going, well, if that's real, then wait, what does that mean? So there wasn't enough distraction. Like they tried, they tried to set up distraction, but I don't know. Ultimately, it didn't end. It didn't work for me. But let's talk about that scene. Because writer Stephen Knight says, in Allied, we haven't seen in recent history that there were scenes that we haven't seen in a while or ever. And one of them is that birthing scene. And he was like, well...
During an air raid.
No
less.
And he goes, and Stephen Knight goes on to say, and this comes from Slash Film, as you go through writing the script, you have these, not a problem, but you have, okay, this has got to get done. You've got to go from the wedding to them waking up with a baby. What happens in between? Well, she's got to have the baby. It's got to be wartime, so you could just see her giving birth. Then the hospital in Hampstead is bombed. Okay, so where they live. So why not have that? It's an air raid, and it's a birth, and it's everything. Just bring it all in, because that's what's great about having a bigger budget. You know how you can do it, and Robert Zemeckis' execution is going to look incredible, which it did.
It did.
I mean, that scene, amidst all this mayhem that's going on around them, and then she's giving birth, like outside with tracers and explosions. And
it was a beautiful disaster.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
And you know what else I appreciated about this film, too, is that Zemeckis purposely wanted to stay away from scenes that we've seen in other World War II in England. Like he said, I didn't want to show Big Ben. I didn't want to show, like, those balloons, the Zeppelins around Big Ben and things like that. So he did. I mean, to great success, we did see different aspects of England, of that wartime, and he sure did make it look and sound real. I mean, it sounded amazing.
I felt like I was getting bombed.
Yeah.
It's like I would not want to be like anywhere where those guys were. It looked beautiful. It sounded great. I think the whole birthing scene was kind of cool, because I thought actually it was going to go longer, but that was like a quick 3 minutes on screen.
Yeah.
But it was impactful because it showed that this was the first time they were like truly, I think, on screen, like their love brought them together, and they're now starting a family amidst this chaos. Shows that they really are just together in the war.
Yeah.
And like, I think that was the moment where like I truly believe that they like were in love as a couple, husband and wife, and soon to be parents.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really great scene. Another scene that I found very interesting, and that came up often, was the party scene. Like they had the party scene.
Parties in this scene.
Well,
in this movie.
Okay, the party scene at the house, like that
during
big.
the second air raid.
Yeah, and it has been described, it was as very bohemian, which I found interesting. And they found
having
interesting.
Sex in the closet and stuff. That one.
Yeah, that's the one. That the house party, because it's sort of, much research was actually done regarding that party, and we all see Britain and English as being very stolid and being very, emotion, like just we're gonna get through this. This party shows a side that we've really never seen in film during a war movie, in that they were living life day by day, not knowing if and when that a bomb was going to have their name on it. So they were living this this life where there was a lot of sex and cocaine and drugs and just like, hey, I got to do this day by day. I found that a very interesting. I found it very interesting that it came up a lot in the research that I was doing. That the party was a very important aspect of the movie. What I didn't understand, I'm going to throw this question out to you, is what do you think the importance was that Max had to invite his sister to the party, Lizzie Kaplan?
Oh, Lizzie.
Like,
I don't think she needed to be there, but I think it was more so because this was at the point where he is under the mission of finding out the truth about his wife. And the character Lizzie Kaplan played, Bridget Vatan, his sister, was like the out and proud lesbian at the time.
right.
And the only family other than his wife that he could trust, quote unquote. So I think it was more so like he had to have someone also there by his side that he could tell literally anything to and trust other than his wife.
Okay.
And at the party, and it feels like that was kind of her kind of scene as well. Like that was her environment, her people that she can easily get along with.
Yeah, but he made it because they had other plans. They were going to go somewhere else, but he said, "Listen, it's very important that you come." And I found it sort of odd that
Moral support.
Okay,
I think it was moral support because he literally just got the mission to
Right.
find out about his wife, and then he goes over to his sister, be like, "They're blue dyeing."
and he
her."
divulges classified information to her.
Yeah,
So
but
I
I think
yeah.
it was like he just wanted family there.
Okay, gotcha.
To support.
Because I was like the way I was just maybe I was overanalyzing because it was like, how did that move the plot? Like, what did she do to confirm or deny whatever suspicions? Because I thought that's what he brought her over for. It's like, listen, I need your help. You got to be there
Kick the
for the
tires a
support.
little
I
bit.
want maybe from your angle you can try to vet something out, but that never really happened. So.
I mean,
just found it
Lizzie
interesting.
Kaplan, she's a good actress, and we know that she's been on a lot and can accomplish a lot. And I was just kind of sad that we didn't see more of her character.
Agreed.
I felt it was underutilized.
And I guess that's what I was getting at. I thought there was going to be more of her.
Than her
and
two
again,
scenes that she was there.
wouldn't that have set up a little more suspense had our main character's sister found a thread to pull on and does some investigating of her own?
And from a woman to a woman finding out something too. I think that just adds a whole nother dynamic to figuring out who Marianne Beauséjour is.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And still, as we talk about the party, then comes the other scene, which they tried to set up as a MacGuffin, where Max sees Mary talking to this gentleman who looked very
Shady.
German evil scientist with his beard, and he's a jeweler,
Shady.
and he was selling me a brochure, but I'm watching it going
Brooch.
a brooch. I was like, yeah, I'm not buying it. I didn't buy that.
I
It's like, I wasn't buying it so that at the end when it comes out that he was part of her network, I was like, yeah, of course he was.
Of course he was. But what was also upsetting about his character is they already set it up that we know that she's working with him. But by the time of his death at the end, we didn't even see it. The audience didn't see it. We only saw gunshots, flashes off to the side, and it was implied that Max shot him. But his character didn't even was yeah, he helped, but in what way? In what way other than being another person in England to help her?
Yeah, again, I think it was part of the network. The way that I read that scene that you're talking about, they pull up in front. Mm-hmm. Max has vetted out and is killing
longest wait.
He's killing that network. And he goes up there, but I think the purpose may have been to set up some semblance of suspense where, because she was getting ready to run, where Max had gotten killed, because it took an overlong time.
Too long of a time.
To before anything happened, and she was getting nervous that and then when the gunshots went off, the character didn't know who it was that was shooting the gun. and hence she was ready to run, and then she sees Max come out. But I'm with you. I didn't believe that.
Like, his
It was
character
anybody
had
else.
no reward at the end. Like,
Right.
why bring him up just to say that he helped her along all these years just to kill him off and we didn't
Sure.
even see it? Because if you take him out of this movie,
Right.
you don't change anything. Nothing changes.
Yep.
So I feel like it was a waste of time building up a character where nothing happened with.
Yeah. No, it was just one of those things that it's part of the story. Maybe in simpler times, like, I think this movie would have worked better even 10 years ago, than like, say, today. I applaud it for being original. I applaud it for being this throwback. I applaud it for even being a beautiful period piece that's a World War II thriller that, I'm with you. I think those movies can be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. This movie had moments of it, but I wanted a little bit more. So, why don't we, do you have any information regarding Stephen Knight, the writing of, like, what inspired him and or what was the process and
the development for this movie that Stephen Knight actually knew about this story is, he says, quote unquote, the story of the movie Allied has been sitting outside my office door like a stray dog for 30 years waiting to get made. And he found it while he was in the U.S. in the early 80s. So this is how long it's been for him. And when he was graduating college back in the 80s, and he just knew about this story. And there was it's kind of actually based on a true story of a man suspecting his wife was a German spy. And actually the real story ends up that he had to shoot her. And he actually did execute his wife at the time. Whereas, in the movie, they kind of changed it for thematical elements.
Right.
And they changed it for dramatic purposes, really. But it is based on a real-life event that happened. Knowing that, while I went into this film, I was like, okay, so what really is going to happen? You
knew this before watching the movie?
Yeah, I knew.
You did?
I knew about the original story before I came into
watching
it.
Did that taint your viewing of the movie, knowing going in, or were you expecting maybe a different outcome?
Because while I'm watching the movie, we see the true love from Max's character. Like, he is so torn over this. He truly loves his wife. He doesn't want to do anything to hurt her. He's willing to do high treason just so she stays alive,
Right.
So I never once in this film that I thought he was actually going to do harm to her. So once we saw the ending and that didn't happen, I was like, yeah, I believed it just because of what I watched on screen.
We'll talk. I want to talk about the ending in a little bit, and I do agree with you that from Max's standpoint, from Max's viewpoint, I too agree that he was greatly in love with this woman. I just didn't buy it from the other side. I almost felt like it was calculated that if she was a spy, this is the perfect person for me to hook up with. And, to sell this more, might as well have his, we're going to get married. I'm going to have a kid. And I may love the kid, but ultimately my goal is to get information to the Nazis. And this is the best way to do it because I'm in. And I've got the best guy to be in with because of his position.
That will protect her.
Yeah.
Literally.
And so, hence, my thing, we could talk about the end. She kills herself.
She shoots herself. I saw that coming.
Yeah, same here. And I didn't... Reason being that the movie ended that way, they said, too, is it was twofold. A, they wanted to show her love for Max and the child. Okay, and then following that scene, we have this scene that was very well shot. Like her writing the letter, it was almost as if a ghost was writing this letter about cool. "I love you, Max," and she writes this to prove that she really did love them. But I didn't buy it. Like I didn't. because she was still a spy. Like, someone who loved somebody that much would have stopped being a spy. Like, would have really loved that person for being who they were, but yet she still had him duped and was still selling off information, and she passed the blue dye exam. You know, I mean, well, by passed, she failed it.
She failed it.
Yeah, all right, she failed it. So she was still using him in the disguise of being this person's wife. So I didn't necessarily buy that, and as her showing of love.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of understand what you're saying with that, because that scene where we see her write the letter and actually speak it out loud to the audience happened literally right after she shot herself.
Right.
Within probably 20 seconds on screen. So it went from her personal death to her personal letter
That she
to
wrote
these
because she
people.
sort of kind of knew what was coming.
I think emotionally I couldn't get there fast enough. Going from her death to love.
Right.
And I had a hard time connecting to that scene. But like, I believe she was in love with Max, and she did have a love for her daughter. But it was just hard to get there and have it really be impactful after what just happened on screen.
Other than Brad Pitt's performance and breakdown and crying and and whatnot. And then it had the footnote at the end of the movie where they were on that ranch. Obviously, time had passed.
Time passed.
You know, and he was with his daughter, his older daughter, and they were, you know, riding horses together.
And the color changed. Did you realize that?
Uh-huh.
It went from like that saturated gray to actual bright yellow, green outside.
Yeah.
So like I kind of liked it. Kind of ended on a happier note for his character.
Yeah. And it was done with the Zemeckis, you know, flair.
Charm.
You know, he you know, people forget that this guy, or maybe they don't, but I will remind, you know, this guy invented technology. You know, he invented the camera that could put two people in a scene flawlessly without seams, without having to film it like, you know, in Back to the Future Part 2, when actors had to play off one another. He also invented technology in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you know, for how to have a camera, you know, on somebody and have people look as if they're actually interacting with a cartoon. You know, the guy is a visually stunning director. Forrest Gump has its great scenes. Were we talking about not too long ago Castaway?
Yeah,
Right? We were talking about Castaway, you and I, not too long ago. The movie Contact has some amazing flourishes. Even movies like What Lies Beneath. You know, the way he can move a camera.
He can visualize, yeah.
He's a great... I believe he's a great storyteller. You know, this one, while it had some of his visual flair, I actually thought that the problem was more script than it was Zemeckis.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, my problem was this actual story. I think it was, I mean, I don't want to complain it was like too simple of a story, because a lot of times I do say this movie was, like a certain movie was easy to follow. This movie was a little too easy to follow.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like some of the stakes were high enough for me to be engaged for another hour and 40 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
For something that we already know.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about where Robert Zemeckis does talk about editing. Found this off of comingsoon.net. It was a really good interview. And he was asked, his movies themselves, do they change a lot in the editing room? And I found this fascinating because he says they change in the editing room, but I don't rearrange the story. He says, I'm a very meticulous filmmaker. I shoot exactly what I need. I don't shoot a bunch of stuff and then try to build the movie afterwards. I don't want to shoot any more than I absolutely have to. You know, that's a great insight.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he gets what he wants. He works with his second AD as well, and he works with the cinematographer. He's worked with Don Burgess. But I just love how he, at this point in his career, for how he started off working low budget movies, I Want to Hold Your Hand, Used Cars, a great underappreciated comedy, very low budget, but when you're working with a low budget, you have to be got a thing in your feet. And then Back to the Future, when you see what he accomplished from a visual standpoint, and I just like the fact that he says, he also worked in film. You could, in that era, you didn't want to shoot a ton because that instantly would raise your budget. Because if you were wasting film, your budget was becoming inflated. So I like how he says, now I'm very meticulous. I shoot what I need, and then in the editing room, that's what we piece it together.
And they actually kind of kept it simple for the actors too, and just how they executed everything for the production end of this. I didn't realize how much VFX actually went into this film.
A ton.
A ton.
A lot.
Out of 954 total shots, 776 of them involved effects.
Yeah.
And while I'm watching it at the beginning of this film, you can easily tell some were VFX shots, some are green screen, some are blue screen, especially when they were sitting in a car. And you had that rear projection behind them.
I noticed that too, but I was wondering, I'm so glad you brought that up. I was wondering if that was done on purpose.
Yeah, it was, because apparently it was easier for the actors to play off of against, and they had live time movement in the background because they put up big LED monitors behind them that actually had film that they shot themselves projected on these screens during live time while they're acting.
Yeah, but I was taking it like that step further because that's the way that movies were filmed, and again, this movie oozes of that era of filmmaking, so to speak, which was great. Speaking of visual shots, the scene when they were at the cafe in Casablanca, actually shot in London.
In London, yep.
Studio. That was seamless to me.
They put that in a small town square.
Seamless.
It. You wouldn't know.
Nope.
Wouldn't know.
I also loved, and too, it's a great Robert Zemeckis opening. The movie opens up in the desert.
In the desert, yeah.
And then, we just see the legs come flying down, and then the
that was
parachute.
a rough landing. When you're parachuting outside of whatever, you land on your butt, not your feet.
Yeah, I just like that scene, and then the Lawrence of Arabia as he's crossing the desert scene, beautifully shot. And again, this is a movie, folks, that you would have to agree that it was really well shot and looked amazing up on the big screen. On the big screen.
For sure it did. Some of the planes the planes themselves were CG, but they actually did build like a half of a rig of a plane that they lit on fire. Just for it. It was the close up.
Yep.
When we saw that plane crash down and almost hit them, that was the rig that they.
That was a great scene, by the way. It's at the party,
That was scary. I was like,
it was.
Y'all are just standing there watching this plane coming right towards you.
I was like, are you at least going to duck?
Yeah.
Or run?
I'd kind of run.
It was a good scene.
And fend for my life.
Really good scene.
It was pretty cool.
It was.
For the production aspect, they filmed on amazing cameras, which are like the Red Dragon.
Yes.
Holy crap. And you can definitely tell. It was the Red Dragon and Panavision Primo 70 lenses, and they shot it in true 6K.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Again, gorgeous.
And that, again, too, is, I credit Zemeckis and his, longtime cinematographer, Don Burgess. They work so well together that it's like they can communicate without talking. So they know what they're looking for. And again, they're both men who come from film. So they are, they're men who, they know what it takes to edit, how to piece things together, how things look. You don't want to waste, how to light things. And in this particular movie, Don Burgess was saying that they had, there was a company, like the companies that they used, were the visual effects company and the post company, there was sort of one entity. So he said it was great because I can do my visual effects, I could do my post, and then I worked with like colorists and, we got everything down. And he seems like a man that's, well, listen, Zemeckis has been doing digital stuff now for a long time before digital became digital. Don Burgess seems to be very comfortable in the digital environment as to how he can make a movie look. I'll have to look it up. I believe he probably did, Don Burgess probably did The Walk. But that movie, again, from a visual standpoint, and the camera.
Beautiful.
If you don't have vertigo, you'd have it watching that movie.
Watch that movie.
Again, this is why I want to talk, I think it's amazing what Zemeckis has accomplished in his career and what he's given movie-going audiences around the world as far as entertainment. I want to throw this question out. Why, he's making movies like Allied or The Walk. They seem to be a little bit more personal stories. Movies like Flight. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm just wondering is he at a time in his career where, and don't get me wrong, they're all original movies. I love watching them. But, you figure, why doesn't a studio throw him another, like a franchise type of picture? I mean, he can definitely do it. Is it because he's too expensive? Does he want to do it? Is he too expensive? We've talked, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Zemeckis built his career on like a really original concept. I mean, we had the whole Back to the Future trilogy and stuff. And what those movies did so well is that they showed a certain aspect of filming that no one has really accomplished yet. And he did that. And I think these more recent films of his, it's like he's getting away from like what's groundbreaking to like the actual true just storytelling. Mm-hmm. With, the added effects with it. But, I felt like his earlier career was like, let's do something nobody has done before and execute it well, and then we'll be remembered in that way. And now it's just getting back to, the roots of just good storytelling.
Yeah, and
personal stories.
And outside of Back to the Future, I can't think of any other Zemeckis' movies that were sequels. Back to the Future, here's my wish. It's my Christmas wish, Mr. Zemeckis. I was fortunate enough to work with you on Contact, which I always stayed fantastic, wonderful. Not only for me was it a wonderful experience, everybody was just tremendous, and I was a kid in a candy store, but it's a great science fiction film. And you pulled out all your directional talents across the board, but I would love for you to work again with Bob Gale, because I argue that Back to the Future, and I believe it's been taught in schools, is one of the, if not near perfect screenplays that you have. And from a story point for a trilogy of movies too, I think that Back to the Future ranks right up there with the original Star Wars trilogy, the original Indiana Jones trilogy. Like, those three trilogies to me are examples of really great storytelling. Mm-hmm. But Back to the Future, he and Bob Gale wrote everything out, and they wrote a beginning, a middle, and an end that really tied everything up so expertly and sweetly that it's hard to come by today to do that. The only people who I think are sort of doing it are the Marvel people, and tying in all of their movies and franchises.
That's the problem with Hollywood right now, is that originality is lacking.
Yes.
That's why we have so many sequels now, because they're going off of stuff that's already established stories. They made a lot of money and they're bankable. But it's hard to find a good original story nowadays that can be the next, more say, potential trilogy. Not that even we wanted another trilogy or an extension of an already established franchise. It's hard to find original stories now.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
most of the movies we covered this year here on Anatomy of a Alone have been sequels.
And to your point, Zemeckis agrees with you 100%. In an interview that he did with The Atlantic, he was asked about original storytelling. And he says, when you don't see movies like this, like Allied. And he goes, I'm very concerned that we don't make movies that are original anymore. And I think the only thing filmmakers can do is try to make a good movie or try to make good movies and make them as long as they allow us to keep making them. But at the end of the day, it's a business. And if audiences don't care, there's nothing we can do. I'll just go away, I guess. I don't want you to go away,
I'm glad he says
don't.
that, because then I think you and I would get along, Robert Zemeckis.
Yeah, I agree with him.
I completely agree too.
And prior to this, we talked about we were doing Manchester by the Sea, a completely different movie from Allied, but yet an original story. I don't want these original stories going away. There are plenty out there, and I want Robert Zemeckis to be given more projects, so that maybe Allied wasn't a home run. I'd give it, maybe it was a double, okay, but I'd still like to see. I still think he has a lot more in him, and again, he comes from a time when the word franchise, people didn't think Back to the Future was going to work.
Yeah.
And when you watch Back to the Future, that movie has a clear beginning, middle, and end. Okay? He saves the day, they do whatever. And if Back to the Future didn't work, there wouldn't have been a 2 and or a 3. You couldn't finish off that trilogy. That's why filmmakers used to just try to make one good movie. And if audiences liked the movie, he had a good opening weekend and a good long run, the studio said, got to make a sequel. Where today, they're more like, well, how do I make a sequel to Allied? How do we franchise this picture?
He marries another woman who's also a spy,
he becomes
too.
a spy, or Hitler comes after Max. I mean, you can't, is the answer. That's not really a bad thing in today's Hollywood. So,
I think this movie stands alone. It does stand alone. It doesn't warrant a sequel, because I don't think anyone would want a sequel out of this.
Yeah.
Because it had a beginning, it had a middle, and definitely had an end. But I don't think Robert Zemeckis, just to keep working, he needs to do another franchise. He's already done it.
Yeah.
So I think he's at his point in a career where he can just do literally whatever kind of movie he wants.
Yep.
And be fine.
Yeah, and like I said, he's always been an innovator. In fact, if memory serves, if somebody can look this up for me, back in the 80s, maybe it was early 90s, he did create the first interactive movie ever. I remember this in Boston, where basically there was a movie, everybody in their seat had had like a remote control. And as the movie was going, a certain signal would come up where the audience would say what would happen next. So, and it was done by it was a computer, so it was quick tally. So you had 1, 2, or 3, and then the audience, then the movie would go in that direction.
I like that.
So, it never really took off. I remember it taking place at the Copley Theater in Boston, and this was a Zemeckis-produced thing. Now, it didn't exactly work, but this was in the 80s. This was the early 90s. He was thinking interactive before interactive became a word when it comes to movies. This is why he's an innovator, and this is why, for me, he's very beloved in the canon of great movies.
I think that's what also makes just a story fun, because you watch that more than once, it's going to be a different ending every single time. It's kind of like The Mystery of Edward Drood.
Sure.
That, the audience gets to choose which pair ends up together, and that changes every single time.
Yeah.
I like that. That's
fun.
I
forget the movie. We could look it up in the booth. It came out somewhere in the 90s. I believe he produced it. But and while maybe that's happening, let's talk about, because I brought it up, let's talk about costumes. I know costumes is something you love.
I do.
You talk about
I enjoy it.
And again, Joanna Johnston is very near and dear to my heart. She was one of the sweetest, kindest people to be part of her team, and I was just the PA. Okay, but she and her crew, made me feel like I was part of a team. And I know nothing about costumes. If you watch me on the show and see how I dress, okay. But in this movie, I was surprised to find out she was only given 2 weeks of prep time.
Wow.
To research this movie.
Out of everyone who has to look like they're in the 40s.
And not only that, she's not just costuming our leads, our beautiful leads, by the ways.
Right.
She's got the supporting cast, all of the extras, everybody, the military men, everybody who is in the movie has a costume that she's got to work with military advisors. And
even their ranks.
The ranks? Oh, you got to make them right?
Yeah. You got to do that too.
Yeah. And
I think they look gorgeous, especially like the color palette for both of them. Because overall, this movie visually was a bit saturated.
Sure.
And really like kind of cold color tones. So to have a purple dress stand out at the beginning, to go to a lighter sky blue kind of color. So like just Marianne's wardrobe throughout the whole film already evolved, you know?
Right. Well, you know, it's funny that you mentioned the purple dress, because she goes from wearing this purple dress to a green dress in the shootout scene. But Joanna Johnson, and this comes from, of all places, Harper's Bazaar. Yes. I turn, no stone goes unturned. I will read an article from Harper's Bazaar, and they had a long debate about the color of that dress because the Americans called it purple, and all of us here in England, she is a Brit, call it midnight blue. And there was a lot of discussion about it because the guy in the car with Max has to say what color that dress is. Like, if you remember, she is wearing a purple dress. It's the only way he's going to recognize her. And what did he say? Something about a bird, a hummingbird. So two sides of the Atlantic had two different opinions. And I wanted her to look sexy, beautiful, but not in a base sexy way. So we put the sex appeal in the back because I knew we were going to see her first from the back. Which, again, these are details that, like, this is what I love talking about.
You got to remember, like, his character, Max Vatan, he's from Toronto. So what color would he understand the most to look out for? Yeah,
and for those who may be interesting, it was a beautiful Italian fabric, very fine, very delicate silk, with all this silver shimmer through it. It's really pretty for the nighttime. But I just found that there was, well, we call it midnight blue. Us Americans call it purple. So I thought that was very fascinating.
That's neat.
Yeah. And Joanna was inspired by old Hollywood films of that era.
Definitely could see that. Mm-hmm.
Wardrobes of Lauren Bacall, Barbara Stanwyck, Katharine
I got a Lauren
Hepburn.
Bacall feeling in this movie.
Didn't you
totally
at certain times?
Especially like how her hair was cut and how it was coiffed in this movie. Totally Lauren.
Yeah, even to in a sense of she Katharine Hepburn. It was huge. She looked at Casablanca, not just for the sheer settings, because it has that great timeless quality. And this I have to say about the costumes. Again, I'm not en vogue at all, but a lot of the sweaters or whatever, or jackets that Brad Pitt was wearing, I'd go, yeah, I'd wear that today if I could. Like, that looks, it is timeless.
Fashion
it's a great era.
Changed.
No, it hasn't to an extent, but it is a timeless era. You know, it's one of the, it's
his suits look amazing.
His suits look great.
There were so many times where Marianne was like, you're in a suit. You're in a different suit, you know. You go, why are you dressed up? And
right.
Like, he looked great in every single shade of color his suits were.
Right. Yeah, no, I thought costuming, again, it's a great time. Even if you watch Casablanca, which is in black and white.
I love that film.
You see the cost, like,
the German wore gray, they wore blue.
Yeah.
Yes.
it is a timeless period. I hope that she gets recognized in one way, shape, or form for her work. And Allied, it could potentially
Do you
be.
think she get nominated?
it might be one of the only ones outside of potential visual effects work, but she could. Right now, nothing else really jumps to
She
mind.
might, maybe against La La Land.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I hope so. Someday, Joanna, I'm with you. If I had any say, you would have won the Academy Award a long, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And she's worked with the greats. She's worked with people like Spielberg.
Yeah.
So she knows her stuff.
Good for her.
And I do say good for her. And, I wish, she's in England. It would be great to reach out. I'd love to have her on the show. I'd love to talk to her about just
Maybe
her
for a
career.
future anatomy.
Yeah, so
Throw that out there.
somebody pass that out to her. That we'd
Putting
love
it
to have her
out
on the
into
show.
the universe.
So, do we want to talk a little bit about reception and such?
Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the music.
Yeah, another
You're always
Score.
you and I are probably the biggest on the music every single anatomy.
Yes.
Alan Silvestri, who's worked with Zemeckis so many times. This is their
Yeah.
16th collaboration together.
Yeah.
For large parts, it was a very small, low key score.
It was.
And what they used for temp tracks in this movie was Castaway music for temp tracks. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. And as I was watching, it was a very low-key score. Like, even in scenes where you would think that score was going to enhance suspense or whatever, score in this movie was very subtle, but it had the Alan Silvestri flair to it. Like, I just knew, I go, oh, this has to be Alan Silvestri, and he's such a great collaborator again with Zemeckis. The guy's no slouch when it comes to scoring movies, and I thought that it was well done.
Right. I think one moment of the movie that I or maybe two moments, that I really, really noticed it was when the plane was crashing down and almost killed them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That I think that was really bombastic. And then also when they go to the jeweler, the shady jeweler guy, and he takes him out by.
You mean when they go to the shop?
Yeah.
Right.
And Marianne's literally just sitting in the car, and there's really no dialogue for a full minute, which was painful to watch. But only the music was underlying that, built that suspense of what is happening right now.
It was very, very, it was very well done. And you're right, it went on for a while. I mean, that was
A little too long.
That was one of the things that, I guess, in a sense, that built suspense, tried to build suspense, and in a case where we sort of kind of knew she was the spy. So I'm trying to find what this movie may have been, but it's funny. This is also a guy. He directed that movie Death Becomes Her. That with Meryl
Goldie
Streep
Hawn.
and Goldie Hawn, and
Great
that
film.
too was one of the things. The first time where we see where somebody gets shot, and you see through the person, this guy. Yeah,
That's a great film. If we were ever to do a retrospective on a film, I would love to cover that one too.
yeah, and he produced for you folks, Tales from the Crypt. It was one of the HBO long-running series that became a couple of movies. This guy has done, his bit for King and Queen, whether it be TV and whatnot. He's a very, listen, what can you do? I mean, the guy's been around forever. He deserves whatever accolades he gets later on in life and going forward. He's earned his cred. So. So now, was there anything else that we missed before we start talking about budgets and reception and
No, I think
and such? So the movie had come out on December 6th, Paramount, and
it actually came out the 23rd.
Was it the 23rd of?
Yeah,
it was
we
the
were a
23rd
little
of
late
November.
to this dissection, yeah.
It was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it came out,
I'm
released
wrong.
November 23rd.
Wow, we are late on this dissection. Wow, so you know what that means? We'll have higher ratings because more people have seen the movie and want to talk about it.
That's very
That's the way I
true.
look at it.
That's
So
very true.
$85 million budget, which just for a production budget for a World War II time period movie,
High.
I think it's low.
Really?
I think for a period piece movie with all of the sets that you would have to do, I thought 85. I would have figured at least 100. But when you factor in hard drives and advertising and stuff, then you get over.
100.
You probably you get over 100. It let's see, on Rotten Tomatoes, we're looking at 61%, which is one of the
it's
rare
not
times.
Terrible.
No,
It's not terrible. The audience is 71.
yeah,
So it's a little bit higher. Cinema score is B,
it's a B.
which that's kind of low. Do you agree with that?
Wait, a B?
A B for this movie?
I was gonna go B plus.
Yeah, I would say B plus.
And I would say for a 61%, if I were going percentage wise, I might give it a 70. I don't think it was like, again, I found the movie to be enjoyable. I had hoped for it to be better because of the talent involved, and because I will always be rooting for Robert Zemeckis. It didn't reach like those heights for me, but regardless, it's still a good movie to be seen on a big screen. Like it's
Gorgeous.
just
You can
because of the way
definitely,
that it's shot.
Did you see this film in IMAX? Was it even in IMAX form?
No,
It could
I
have been in
didn't.
IMAX.
Yeah, but I didn't know.
It would have been
I didn't.
gorgeous, especially
Yeah.
with the air raids and all the bombing. It would have been amazing on an IMAX.
I gotta bring this up too about the air raids and the bombings. They weren't too dark. As an audience, you were able to see pretty much everything happening, whether it were in the foreground or in the background. I thought that was great. The scene with the plane was great too, because that's a great Robert Zemeckis flair, because they're looking up. One of the party members goes, "All right, we got one." And then you see the plane just start careening and coming down, and they're like going, "Oh wait, we got one. We got like, what are we gonna do?"
Right.
And the fire, it was a great scene when you break it down. So there's much to applaud about the movie. And if you hadn't seen it and you're watching us, all right, so you already know the plot. But if you have seen it, what did you think about the movie? Tell us what you thought visually and from a direction standpoint. I wasn't bored.
I wasn't bored because I was really, needless to say, I was intrigued by the story. I kind of wanted like a little twist at the end, like what if she wasn't a spy? And all this was for naught, you know? Like, I think that would have been cool. But the whole slow build up, him going to, like, this person, and then this person, and then this person, just to learn a little bit more about her and to confirm his doubts and stuff. But, like, I think it was a slow burn of figuring out all these things about who this person is, which we already knew.
Yeah, one other
It's
plot.
like he was a little too slow to get there.
Yeah, one plot point though that I do want to bring up, because it was a tragic plot point. He finds that airman, he finds that pilot,
Yeah.
and he says, "Hey, when you go there, give you this, and I want you to ask him about this person. This is confidential. This is just you." And the guy's like, "Okay, I'll do that for you. All right, fly safe."
Nope.
And then we come to find out that because he sent him on that mission, because of Max's decision to do that, that pilot crashed, burned, got killed.
Yeah.
And I found that to be like a decent part of the story, that maybe his obsession with this, it's seeping out, where it's not just affecting him, but
It's affecting
other
other
people.
yeah.
And he too, being an airman, can feel the tragic loss of this young soldier.
The camaraderie.
Yeah.
And like I liked how you brought that up too, because it shows that not only is he affected, but other people have died because of this woman.
Yeah.
And he was now solely like in blame, at fault for someone else's death because of his wife.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was a very interesting scene.
And I felt bad for the guy, because
How could you not?
once they established him, he was already nervous as all hell,
Yeah.
just to go on, be behind enemy lines for the first time, and then give him a confidential mission that literally gets him killed.
Yeah.
Was just like, he obviously did not deserve that.
Yeah. It was an interesting plot point to put into the movie.
Made it more personal.
It made it more personal. Yep. So, well, I think we've talked. We've gone up, down, front, center,
Yep.
right, left about Allied.
And round.
And so why don't we begin to wrap this up? Final thoughts on Allied, Marissa?
I enjoyed it. If you like a visual spectacle, watch this film. Definitely. If you like a good thriller about, just like a good thriller story, watch this film. If you're looking for like a completely crazy film that you think a lot's going to happen, don't watch this film.
Yeah. I mean, I would
Overall,
say
I enjoyed it.
if you want to see filmmaking done from a bygone era that mixes today's technology, this is a movie to go see. If you're a film nut, you're a film historian and geek like we are here, you'll enjoy aspects of this movie because you'll go, oh, okay, I get the Casablanca. Oh, okay, this is a little Hitchcockian. Oh, Lawrence of Arabia.
I want to watch Casablanca again.
You'll appreciate that. You'll appreciate the aspects and the time and detail that Zemeckis put into making it like that movie. Mm-hmm. And it is an original story. So there we go. We've wrapped up on Allied. Please stay tuned because in the coming weeks we have movies like La La Land. We're getting into the award season. Then we got this tiny film Rogue One, which comes out in about a week's time. We have Passengers at some point. Then we've got Nocturnal Animals. We've got Fences. We've got all of these movies that we will be getting to at some point in time. So be allies with us. And continue to watch movies and continue to tune in. Thank you very much for all your help and support and comment. Take care. We'll see you guys at the movies.
Producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.